Hello, everyone. This is Sharon Munoz, and this is my reflection on cultural blindness. So, when I think about cultural blindness in the congregation where I serve, I'm not thinking of any big symbols at first, although those symbols do exist. I mean, there's stained glass, there's, the religious motifs of the dove and Jesus all over the place. But when I think about this, I'm thinking of everyday moments, and a lot of what tells me the most about this church actually happens in passing conversations, not in any formal settings, but things like talking over coffee after worship or the small chats that I have as I'm setting up for Bible study. For example, this past Sunday, I was having a conversation with a member about a computer keyboard. It seemed really simple at first and just practical. Should I get a new keyboard? What do you think of this brand? And all that. But then she shared that the computer, her whole setup actually belonged to her son, who has passed away, and no other details. Really, just, well, the computer used to belong to my son, and he who passed away, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And so, I mean, for her, it was a passing moment, but for me, it was a moment that changed the whole conversation because it showed me how much grief and memory can be tied into very ordinary things. I mean, I think of the earrings that I'm currently wearing. No one would know unless I told them, but these are earrings from my father, who, I haven't had contact with since I was a very young girl, because he was deported. And so for me, again, that's a passing moment for me, but for anyone who's hearing this, it shows a lot. But for me, like, the most powerful symbols in the congregation are not objects themselves, but the stories that people are carrying with them. And so when I think about how I relate to people in the congregation, I do see both similarities and differences. I mean, one similarity is that I understand loss, even though in a different way. I was a former foster youth, and I've experienced separation and grief from, my biological parents, my father, my mother who passed away. And so when I hear people talk about losing loved ones, it's not foreign to me. I mean, I understand that life can change quickly and unexpectedly, but there are also some differences. I mean, for example, I'm Latina, and I'm serving in a predominantly white congregation that is significantly older than me. I mean, a lot of them are in their 70s and retired professionals. And we didn't grow up the same way, and we don't have the same cultural background or life experiences. But what I'm learning is that those differences don't mean people are any less complex or less emotional. Everyone has joy, grief, deep stories, even if I'm not seeing them right away. And so one of my challenges is actually that I do sometimes assume I already understand people because I see them every week, but really I don't. A lot of who people are, I'm noticing, comes out very slowly over time and often in small moments. So I'm really working on just learning to listen more carefully and not assume I already know someone's story. And so when it comes to these stories that people are silently carrying, I don't think they should be forced out of people, but I do think that they matter. I mean, people share things when they feel safe, and so my job isn't to bring those out by prying or by digging. It's just to be someone they can trust when they do choose to share. And so uh, to talk about one of my blind spots is that I can be a little shy. I mean, I would like to be the person that someone can trust. However, my shyness has definitely been a hindrance, especially because I'm younger than many people in the congregation, and sometimes I hold back instead of just starting conversations. And another blind spot is that I sometimes observe more than I participate, especially in social spaces. That's something I really want to work on. Uh, then the best way to work on that for me is just being more present, sitting with people, asking simple questions, not trying to be perfect by any means, but just being willing to talk and to listen. And from the pulpit, I do think it helps when preaching doesn't assume everyone is the same. People are coming in with very different lives, and so it helps when sermons leave space for the complexity of people. I mean, their grief, the struggle, and hope all at the same time. And what doesn't help is when preaching assumes too much about the people or treats them like one group with one experience. And so, one of the most important symbols in our congregation, I think, is the time after worship when people stay and talk after the sharing of the piece. And, we go into the social hall where we have coffee or a meal. I think that space really matters. A lot of real connection and real care is happening there. And it's simple, but it's where people actually see each other. And what this communicates about the congregation is that relationship is a core value. Church is not just about the service itself, but about being together, staying present with one another, and caring for people beyond formal worship. And it's also how we stay connected, and we hear about our homebound members, people who are in rehab, or people who are dealing with a sudden loss in their family. All of that is definitely at the heart of who this congregation is. And I do think it also shows a kind of local theology in which God is present in everyday conversation, not just in, the structured Sunday service, but it's about being in a community that values presence, listening, and shared life as a part of faith. And so if I were the pastor of this congregation, this symbol would shape and would have to shape how I lead and preach by pushing me to be more relational and, less standoffish and less abstract. And preaching would need to connect with the real life stories and leave space for people to reflect on their own experiences. And so worship should not just be about delivering a message and this is what the scripture says, goodbye, accept this blessing, go through that traditional format, but it has to be about forming a space where people can encounter God through community. And I would also be more intentional about allowing time after worship for that conversation and pastoral presence, because that's where a lot of the congregation's theology is being lived out. And so thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing other people's reflections. Thank you.